In the space of 30 years, a lot of memories can be collected. We're here to bring out a few of them from an extraordinary group of men and women. 30 years ago, a handful of dedicated Kiwanians in Cedar Falls, Iowa, realized that an early morning meeting time could open the doors to a whole new membership. They were right, and on June 4th, 1980, the Rough Risers Kiwanis Club was chartered with 21 members. You can spend hours digging through the archives, reading the articles, and looking at the pictures of people who are and are not around anymore. There's good stuff in there. Did you know that in July of 1981, we received $240 for recycled newspapers? Or that in 1983, we introduced the Volksmarch event to the Sturgis Falls Festival. It's fascinating and it's heartwarming to see this history of a group of people who gathered for the sole purpose of improving the lives of the children, the families, and the residents of this community. Let's listen to the voices of some of our charter members as they recount some memories from our first 30 years.
There was an underlying feeling amongst all of the people that you contribute back to the community in which you live, and so therefore we had been looking for an avenue that we could use to do that.
Les Huth had been a Kiwanian, and since he was our first president, that helped a lot.
When Marv came to me and asked if I was interested in that, I had a loud yes.
The Holiday Inn has been home to the Rough Risers for much of the past 3 decades, but in the early years, the club spent some time looking for just the right home.
The Holiday Inn had interesting times dealing with us because they really were not prepared for a morning group.
They had told the cook he needed to be here by 6:30. We wanted to eat at 6:30. He arrived at 6:30.
And we eventually moved on to Embers as our next place. You had to go through the kitchen at Embers. And there are times when you would hit that kitchen floor and you would slide all the way across the kitchen because the grease would be a 1/4 inch deep all the way across the floor.
From Ember's slippery floor to the booths at Happy Chef to Country Kitchen, which was simply closed when we arrived to meet one morning, we ultimately ended up back at Holiday Inn, which continues to serve us well. Finding a place to meet was one early issue, and figuring out what to do at the meetings was another.
We brought in music books. Like every 3rd or 4th meeting, it seemed like we had a sing-along.
I think we've been recognized for our singing abilities.
Oh, and we had the tape-recorded America until the tape recorder started slowing down.
In the early stages, we really had to focus on just learning what Kiwanis is, what Kiwanis does. And as Nick said, I think most of us came into the club thinking we wanted to put in some time and effort, not just hand out a few checks.
The young club did learn what Kiwanis was all about, and they found their footing in a strong sense of community service. To serve, the club needed resources, and so begins the never-ending work of a service organization, fundraising.
The first few years, fundraising was always difficult, and the 2 fundraising things that we got that really got us leveled out was the first one was the waffle days, and we had gone from this renting the evening club waffle irons to purchasing our own waffle irons.
Fundraising usually means selling, and not everyone likes to do that.
There was one exception in our club, and that was Lynn Schwan. Lynn Schwan would sell anything.
And Lynn pushed paper recycling from day one on us, and for a long time we had a semi-trailer parked on Main Street across from where McDonald's is now. When we'd fill a trailer, it would go to recycling down in Cedar Rapids. So Dave Christensen and I built 4 little buildings, and they were placed in Hy-Vee lot and one out at Thunder Ridge, and I forget where the other 2 were.
Paper recycling was good for many years, but nothing lasts forever. The recycling centers became occasional arson targets, and the bottom dropped out of the recycled paper market. Service clubs often look to local festivals and events as opportunities to raise money. It would be difficult to list every event that we've been a part of in our 3 decades, but certainly our hometown festivals, Sturgis Falls, and the Cedar Basin Jazz Festivals have left us with some memories and some profits.
Our first attempt was a watermelon stand. And we set up down in Island Park, and we bought like $60 worth of watermelons and sold maybe 5.
And there were some interesting things that happened during Sturgis Falls.
We were gonna charge $1 to park cars.
Which the mayor wasn't real happy about, us charging for parking down in the parks on public property.
That's when we moved to popcorn, and we started out with one machine at Ice House and for the Dixieland, and we sold popcorn for 2 or 3 years just with one machine.
Actually going out in the crowd selling, hawking it.
And we would work the parade, and we would work the Dixieland the whole time it was going on down there.
At 25 cents a bag,
Yep.
then 35 cents a bag. Did we ever get to 50 cents a
I don't
bag?
know.
It takes a lot of
I don't
bags
think
of
we ever got to
popcorn
that.
to make $800.
But at the Dutcher site, John came out one year and said, well, I'm gonna build a new building next year. We're gonna put in an outlet right here just for you to pop popcorn. And if you go down to Dutcher's today and go back in the alley back there, there's an outlet that's on the back wall. It's there for the sole purpose of popping popcorn for Kiwanis. And John was never a member of our club, but he was always very supportive of our club.
We used to have great big barrels, and then we would ice down pop and so forth, and we'd take it around on trailers and have popcorn that we would sell and that type of thing during the parade. I can remember the one time we got to the corner, I think it was over on Main Street, got to the corner, and as we made the turn, our whole tank fell over, and all the pop and everything is out in the middle of the street. The crowd loved it. We were the best float in the parade that year.
Fundraising efforts with varying success have come and gone. And then the club struck gold.
Our kettle corn operation was previously done by Kraft Cochran, Keith Sandoval. And Keith came to me and he said, you know, would you like to buy this and do it in the summer? And I said no, but I said I think I might be able to find an organization that would.
Well, we had another inside track on that, and that's that Dave Loy was the accountant for Sandvold, and Dave knew exactly what the machine would do.
The Rough Risers are now on their second kettle corn popper. Kiwanis kettle corn has become a staple of our local events and remains a fantastic fundraiser.
Of course, all these projects, the purpose was to raise funds for contributions to needs in the community.
When the city's new Birdsall Park needed trees, the City Parks Department turned to the Rough Risers.
As a club, we spearheaded in the community a drive for people to purchase a tree that their name would be associated with, so that in the future you could bring your grandchildren out and say, I planted this tree 20 years ago. And so we did all the work, we planted all the trees, and about 6 months later we asked them to see the list, and in the process the parks director had moved on and a new parks director was there, and our list had been thrown away. So all this effort we put into getting all these trees and getting them out there, nobody knew whose tree was whose.
The libraries received some benefits
Yes.
from our club too. Downstairs, didn't we work to make the TV production room and so
Right.
forth? That was
Painting and
quite a
decorating.
project, as I recall. And then back when computers were just starting to get popular, we bought a computer, as I recall, for the library so that they could make it available to people to come and learn how to use a computer.
We had a project where we contributed upwards of $5,000 to the children's collection at the library.
Yeah.
Did a project with Quakerdale, one of them being taking the Quakerdale kids out to Hickory Hills fishing. It was a fun day.
Any group within the community that would come to us and has a reasonable appeal for youth in the community, we're in tune with that.
We currently have scholarships that are based with Hawkeye Community College, Cedar Falls High School, and High School. A couple of those were tied to, one was to John Scott, who was a longtime treasurer for the club. The other one for Dean Primrose. Both of the gentlemen have passed away, and we're hard workers with the club.
We also annually sponsor a family at Christmas. We've done that for many, many, many years through the Salvation Army.
That's always been a mainstay of the club. Is the members were as much interested in the physical input two projects as they were in the monetary part of the project.
I think one of the first building projects
Yes.
was by the club was in relation to the bridge.
While a bridge seems to be a pretty ambitious first project, it still stands, and it's a key piece of our community's trail system, which is enjoyed by thousands of people. And here's something else that our residents enjoy, courtesy of Kiwanis.
The Cedar Falls Parks Director came to us again, and he had been at a conference, and he won all of the hardware for this disc golf. But they didn't have money in the budget to install it.
And Kiwanis came through, funding the project for the community.
I think it's probably one of our most popular and most used projects because it's always in use.
And then we really got connected with Hartman Reserve and the Cedar Falls Park Service with a lot of shelter house, handicapped access, observation decks.
The Rough Risers mark is all over Hartman Reserve. In addition to some interior work in the Visitor Center and the Sugar Shack, Kiwanians constructed accessible decks and overlooks, meeting shelters, and a tower, which was used first as a nesting site for reintroduced osprey and then as an observation post. The Rough Risers' work can also be found in Blackhawk Park and, of all places, on grounds managed by the Rotary Club.
And they wanted handicapped access ramps to the haunted house. And I said, well, is there anything on the east side here we need to worry about when we dig these holes? And the guy standing looks around and says, oh, there's nothing here. Third hole we dug, we hit water.
Our club was instrumental in removing the lumber from one of the older buildings being torn down on the university campus, big timbers, and those were used to build the loft and the deck areas at the Ice House Museum. Recent projects have involved the soccer complex, so we have now built 4 shelters or buildings for them.
Shelters at the soccer complex and construction assistance at the Cedar Valley Arboretum are 2 more examples of projects which directly impact the quality of public spaces in our community. The Rough Risers have also worked on themselves, allowing changes in their structure to be a more inclusive and effective group.
Reflects one of the changes in our club when it became generally the club policy to invite women to join.
All who have a heart for serving their community and who don't mind getting up early are welcome as Rough Risers. As we finish this celebration of our first 30 years, and as we look forward to the next, let's listen to some more of our charter members' own words about this club and their community.
One of the values of the club to me is if all I do, which I often do, is just come into the programs, is the value of the programs.
Because the informative people we have only give them a half hour, to speak to us, but just the variety of it and learning more about Cedar Falls.
I don't know that this club does more social events than any other club. But what happens is because of all the work projects, they do more socializing.
Yeah. Like what Les said, when you talk to people, they say, when you tell them how much work you're going to be doing with the kettle corn on weekends and so forth, they why don't you just have every member, donate $500 and then you won't have to do that. I said, that's part of the fun of doing it is working together to raise money. And that's what the club is really about, is working together, whether it's a project to build a shelter or working together to do the kettle corn on a weekend. We have fun working together, and it's a working club.
The right thing to do is when the community needs something, you step forward and help them.
That's what we're here about. We serve, we build. Let's get out and let's do things rather than just contribute. And when you can do both, it's wonderful. And Kiwanis can really mean a lot to a community, and I think they have here.
Happy birthday, Rough Risers.